Hi, and good morning. Welcome to In the Feed Zone. Start that one more time. Hello, and good morning to In the Feed Zone. I want to thank you for joining in today. Just going to get a couple things shared out to some of our partners, and we'll be able to get ready to go. Today, we'll be covering a very interesting topic, but before that, let me introduce myself. My name is Jason Flores, and I come on Fridays to post a video called In the Feed Zone. And what In the Feed Zone does is kind of bring a little bit of information to you as a writer about popular media, and we'll kind of break down this topic in hopes to get a little bit of better understanding of the topic and kind of maybe raise questions, that sort of thing, through a conversation here of an article online. But before that, we'll do a quick medical disclaimer that the only purpose of this live stream is to educate and to inform, and it's not a substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. It's provided on the understanding that it doesn't constitute medical or professional advice or services. Quickly again, going over the goals of today's live stream, it's actually to present articles in the media covering food and hydration and how it relates to endurance sports, and also to open a dialogue for viewers to ask questions or to get more information or to share their experiences. So today's article is actually brought to us by Precision Hydration. I'm going to drop a link into the live stream here in just a moment, and you'll be able to take a look at the full article of everything that we're going over and we're chatting about today. So today we're going to be talking about a topic that's very relevant. Just got off a chat with the coaches from the Coaches Corner at the Endurance Lab, and everyone's got days across the country here in the United States. Being in California, we don't get so much snow. But definitely a very relevant topic here. So we're going to cover how can hot drinks help you perform in cold weather. And it doesn't need to be freezing temperatures or anything like that. It could just be colder than our normal temperatures that you normally ride in. So I think it's important to kind of take this conversation and kind of bring that to the next level, and we'll be able to kind of chat about essentially what could you do to make yourself more comfortable. You know, so many times in the conversation, you'll find that we talk about having colder drinks or being able to bring that to the table as far as making it so that you can drink more. But in fact, when the weather is cold, warm drinks can have the same effect. And we'll have that, and we'll go over that here in the conversation today. So here are the kind of the topics or the things that we're going to be looking at today as far as topics as we go across, and we kind of come across our conversation on can hot drinks help you perform in cold weather. First, we'll take a look a little bit about the research as far as hot drinks and how they affect the body in cold weather. And then we'll talk about how warm drinks encourages you to drink more. We'll talk about how hot drinks are a huge morale booster in cold temperature conditions. Also how to use hot drinks, a couple tips in that respect, as far as how to use them in training sessions. And then maybe a couple things as far as how to carry hot drinks with us during an event, and some suggestions on what the best hot drink to drink would be for us to be able to enjoy during that time. So again, welcome everybody. Yeah, John says food, my favorite subject. Absolutely, John. So more drinks than food, but yeah. So we'll start back kind of going over a little bit of the science about it, and what does the research tell us as far as food and that sort of thing. And we'll kind of take our time and kind of just try to understand the relationship between essentially the environmental temperature and your beverage temperature, and what that has as far as food and performance. And it's been studied even as far back as the early 2000s, but exclusively research have examined how cold drinks can enhance performance, typically in hot conditions. But in fact, it can also help us in this cold conditions as well. And of course, you know, like I mentioned at the beginning, that the general consensus seems to do that they can, cold drinks can definitely help us compared to room temperature fluids. So if in fact the research or what they're looking into is trying to figure out if a warm drink would help in a very cold temperature. But so unsurprising, in the research, there's been more attention given to this as far as hot temperatures and cold drinks versus the heat. And so even though that in the cold, our bodies do actually work harder in order to be able to produce the same sort of efforts. And we've covered that in the last couple podcasts as far as how much energy is put out and how carbohydrate use and hydration concerns are very important. I think a lot of times it is not seen as, I guess, difficult just because of the temperature, but it's definitely more challenging than even can be more challenging, than the very, very hot spectrum of things. So if we look at peer-reviewed studies, it is a bit thin, and it comes down to essentially drawing a bit from more from kind of experience and essentially common sense, or just experiences of other riders and that sort of thing. So in this article, they talk about experiences that the rider has had or has collected about training and competing in super cold conditions, doing cross-country skiing or ultra distances in the winter, and that sort of thing, and pulling that from other elite athletes as well who do train and race in alpine or winter sports. And so the two benefits kind of come down to a couple of things. Anecdotally, you're looking at having warm drinks available at low temperature, again, encourages you to drink more than you otherwise would, as well as because taking in ice cold drinks in an already frigid condition can definitely be unpleasant. And it discourages you from drinking at the times when you should actively be keeping these fluids even more so topped off and kind of on top of things. The risks proposed by dehydration are the same. They're no different than when the temperature is warm, but they still do exist. You do lose a surprising amount of sweat if you do go all out when you're working out and you're completely bundled up, arms, sleeves, vest, mask. If in fact it's that cold out, you can definitely lose a huge amount of sweat through those clothings as well. So it's really important. And also through your breath, because your body is trying to keep your temperature equalized, as well as the air that you're breathing in and out warm to keep yourself comfortable. The other thing is that hot drinks can be a huge morale booster during these cold conditions. Essentially that, being able to have a flask of, piping hot, whether it be coffee or tea, as we go through the examples today, during those longer sessions when you're out in the cold, can definitely be much better than drinking that cold drink and more motivating than drinking that cold drink that just like get to your teeth and make your teeth rattle and make your teeth sore essentially during those cold temperatures. So just thinking of the idea of, after this huge climb, the weather has changed from the bottom to the top of the climb. And then all of a sudden you're at the top and you're regrouping. And instead of this freezing cold, wind that's coming across you and you're getting cold as you wait as the group, regroups, you have like a quick shot of hot, let's say, hydration drink, or just even if it was just room temperature, just because you're braving the wind and that sort of thing before you head down to go back down the hill could be something that anyone could look forward to. So it could be anything. It could be a variety of hot drinks. It could be tea. It could be coffee. We've got stories of 24-hour races that some of our team riders are doing, and having those stops where you're having warm drinks can definitely be motivating versus, again, those cold drinks that can be thrown out there. So a lot of these stories come from very long, cold, overnight, workouts or training or races. So having a pit crew, which we'll talk about later, having availability of strong, let's say, black coffee or just that strong hot tea or something like that could be very useful, but we don't always have the availability of something like that. So we'll talk about a couple alternatives here as we move forward. as we head outside during these sporting situations, it could be motivating as far as having these hot drinks in the cold weather. Obviously, it is fun to get out during that as long as it's not too frigid. But it always is a very HTFU, being able to get out there and kind of, be strong and get through it. So with our culture of, having hot drinks and that sort of thing, it is something that can be transferred to essentially a boosted athletic performance, even if it does have the placebo effect, because you're still getting hydration in. It's just a more comfortable way of getting in. So essentially, the question comes down to how do we effectively use hot drinks during these cold sessions? And if they do assist in cold, the next question is how do we get access to those and be able to use those efficiently? So obviously, in some of the stories that they presented in the article, they talk about using a support crew, which can be definitely great. Also having availability to it during a race, and maybe the organizers have that available, and using maybe room temperature or kind of warmer drinks rather than the colder drinks when it is cold could be very useful. So if in events there isn't in fact your own support crew, or the organizers have a support crew available, it could be relatively easy. Yes, of course, this is ideal, as they can carry flasks to keep things warm and that sort of thing. But planning to drink these hot drink stops during training sessions is where we need to kind of find out how we can make that work, because we're not always in the situation where there's a crew available or there's a group where you can do that. So what we want to avoid is having to stop too long on a training session, for example, and essentially get heavy legs and not be able to continue at the effort or the pace that we want to continue on. So being self-sufficient, there are a couple options that cut down, because being able to carry an insulated drink vessel or stopping somewhere to get a hot drink would be the options. So stopping is not ideal, of course, but on the longest training, you're looking 2-3 hours plus. Planning a stop could be very useful, just for the fact that it can work in these circumstances to be able to not have to carry this, flask or this double-walled stainless steel flask, for hours and hours on those hardcore training sessions. So, doing that sort of thing, or having that available, or knowing that you're going out and back somewhere or going to be passing by somewhere kind of easy, maybe not choosing the most comfortable, beautiful, fun cafe on the way, just to keep it simple, and just getting maybe hot coffee at like a gas stop or something like that could be much better than trying to actually choose a nice cafe where you could actually sit and maybe get stuck halfway through your ride. So I guess on the topic of carrying hot drinks, when it's not possible, there are a few options. You can use, like I mentioned, a proper double-walled insulated flask. It doesn't need to be very large. Even a small amount of hot drink can definitely be very, very soothing. So a durable stainless steel is the best option in the outdoor sporting situations, and it can keep things hot quite well when you warm them up beforehand. So you're looking at even to several hours, even up to 24 hours, if in fact you're needing to keep things warm, if you take the time to preheat them properly. The problem with the flask is that it usually requires two hands. So if in fact it is that cold, unscrewing the lids on the go could be very difficult. So it'll obviously have to be, at a stop. But also, if you remember, if in fact it is that cold, then you may be running into the issue where you're going to need to be taking gloves off. And in the previous podcast, we have talked about making sure that things were accessible. So that is important. And also they don't typically fit in bike bottle cages and that sort of thing, or even in your waist pack while running. So it could be kind of heavy and kind of clunky. So these kind of flasks are things that you could use. Let's say if you're doing loops around somewhere, you can keep this on a part of the loop that you circle back to. Not more than one time have I, put an extra bottle on the turnaround of a out and back loop that I was going to do multiple loops on. I'd come back and hopefully the bottles would still be there, hide them in the bushes type deal. I've also parked the car on a far end of a loop and started the loop on the other side and kind of used the car as kind of the middle, as the middle point. So the other way to look at it, cycling specific, is you could also use insulated bottles. And so these are the same bottles that are primarily designed to keep drinks cold during the heat, but also can help keep things warm for at least a short period of time when it is cold out. But if you are in fact going to carry a warm or a hot bottle, it's probably better advised to actually carry it in your back jersey. And the reason why is that you won't have wind kind of, going across the face of the bottle, cooling the bottle down, which in fact is what we want it to do in the summer, but not typically in the winter. Joe drops in a comment about the Elite De Boyo cycling flask is great for hot drinks. That's awesome, Joe. I'll definitely drop a link to that if that works for you. We definitely love to hear that. So in reality, we'd be lucky to keep a drink more than lukewarm for about an hour or so on a training session in a plastic bottle on the coldest days. But if it's not completely, freezing cold, in fact, you should be able to keep a 16 to 24 ounce bottle for about an hour or two. And if you're even to just keep it at room temperature, if the temperature was in the 50s or 40s, I think that would still work very useful in the fact that it could give you that boost or at least that comfort of drinking that hydration drink not at that frigid cold temperature that you'd want to, essentially matching the outside temperature. And then for running, I know Elite also makes a very good pack, and drinking having hot drinks during running can be even more trickier. And so carrying a backpack or a bottle holder, which in fact stores the flask or the insulated bottle, but may not be such an issue with normal training runs, but longer ones, definitely heat production can be high. So having that hydration available could be very, very useful. So I think the last kind of part of this, or the kind of take home, is what's the best drink to drink during these hot events, these cold events. What's the best hot drink to drink during these cold events? And then I think the consideration in the article that they brought up is essentially it's personal preference, just like anything else. It allows you to choose what you like, and there's not really anything better than the other. You could actually take your regular hydration drink like they did with Precision Hydration, or if you're using like a Scratch Labs or whatever it may be, you can actually just try to keep that warm. And a lot of times it wouldn't taste that bad. And so looking at different things as something simple as, juice or whatever your hydration drink is normally could be useful. Mixing it up by having some coffee or tea could be very good. Also having a little bit of an electrolyte like they did in the example in the article also could be really useful, just because as you do add electrolytes, it does keep things from freezing over. So I think it could be useful. There is an example of using alcohol drinks, but obviously you'd want to maybe sway away from those from your getting your optimum performance from those. As a performance point of view, we've talked about alcohol and its effects on your performance. So in the article they do go and they did use their Precision Hydration drink, which is very similar to the electrolyte levels in a lot of the drinks that our athletes use here across Team ODZ and the Endurance Lab. It can definitely work well because it does have the glucose in there. It definitely has the glucose in there, which helps because with this sort of effort, you are going to burn through more glucose when the temperature is dropped. So having those and other, the other benefits of just getting that proper hydration, having that, 4 to 6% carbohydrate solution for best hydration can all be very, very beneficial. Just getting it at the right temperature could be very, motivating, as we talked about today. So I guess the question is, and that sort of thing is, do you like to drink hot drinks? Have you tried this before? Definitely would love to hear. I know Joe just dropped the link of those thermal bottles called the De Boyo from Elite. Thanks for dropping that in there. We want to hear from you. I am not from the coldest temperature region, but I'd like to hear what you guys do and what you think of kind of the things that we brought up here in the article today. I think today, taking a look at the research and how hot drinks can, help us in the cold weather has given us a little bit of insight as far as how it does and can encourage us to drink more, just in the same way that a ice cold drink can help us drink more in very hot temperatures. Anecdotally, we can find that warm drinks can definitely encourage you to drink more during cold weathers. Of course, it's a huge morale booster in these cold conditions, as well as, trying to, the challenges of trying to figure out how we can use them. So if you're just tuning in now, rewind the live stream here. You can go back and listen to this, whether it be on the podcast version, as you search for Endurance Lab in your favorite podcast app, here on Zwift Live, or on any of our various YouTube channels at Team ODZ YouTube, as well as the Endurance Lab YouTube channel. We'll be talking about these articles. You can go back and listen to those and some tips on how to keep these drinks cold as you are out on your training and racing sessions. And then lastly, we covered how a hot drink can, which hot drink is best. And essentially, it's the same as which diet is best, which training program is best, and it's the one that you use. And so the one that you use and you're able to utilize and it makes you comfortable, I think is the one that you should use and that can work for you. But I think the main thing is that we need to take a look at take an opportunity to look and see how the temperature of a drink can make a difference when you're out on your next training ride. So with that, I'm going to go, if there's a couple questions here. I know Joe's been pretty interactive here. As far as questions that I've got about this it really depends on the temperature, freezing versus sub-freezing, but it varies in that respect. As far as question, Joe drops in a comment that he says he hates dropping in a cafe when he's all by himself. Hot chocolate and instant oat works really well. Yeah, absolutely. Carrying that along board, and like I mentioned in the middle of our talk today, dropping in, a favorite cafe in the mid-ride may end up you just hanging out there the rest of the time. So yeah, it can be tough. So thanks again for joining in today. If you have an article that you'd like us to cover here on In the Feed Zone, drop a link here. I monitor all of these here as we do live stream. And don't forget to head to your favorite podcast app and search The Endurance Lab, and you'll be able to get all our podcast, our live stream interviews and articles transferred over to a podcast audio version for you to be able to listen to on the go, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channels, both Team ODZ and Endurance Lab, for all of your video replays, as well as here on Zwift Live by ODZ. I want to thank you for joining in today, and I will see everybody next week in the Feed Zone.